So welcome everyone. A reminder that we are recording the meeting and we are streaming the meeting. So just be aware. Okay, new members. Do we have any new members or first-time visitors? Laura? Laura and I met at the manicure pedicure place. And I saw a lot of her work and said, you have to join. So what else you want to say?
That's it. With charcuterie boards and stuff, and now I'm doing furniture and stuff like that just out of my house. And when Vicki said join, I was like, yeah, I could always use an education in what I'm actually doing, so I'm really grateful to be here.
Well, welcome. Anyone else want to? No? Okay, well, we'll keep moving. All right, raffle drawing. Everybody bought their raffle tickets? We have 3 items. Who's drawing? Brian? Brian. Oh yeah. Okay. No, I know. We've got 3 items. We have a Woodcraft $50 gift card. We have a Rockler $20 gift card, and we have 2 pins to choose from Jeff Nasser that he made for us. Did you draw?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Here we go, folks. I don't have a microphone.
All right, number 776464. 776464.
Bottom right.
All right.
Hey,
Come on up, Steve. That's his job. Steve, will you draw the next one for us?
Yeah. Here we go.
776472. 472.
Oh, Terry.
Come on up, Terry.
You want a pen or a $20 gift card?
But draw the next number before you pick. See? Once bossy, always bossy. Okay, and the last number is 776427. 427, Rich. Pick a pen. Pick a pen.
Pick a pen, pick a ticket.
No more tickets. I don't have any more prizes.
You got 2 pens?
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought you said 3. What? Here's an.
Just like home, nobody listens. Okay, one more. One more for the last pen. 776452. 452. Come on up. All right. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, so some announcements of some upcoming events. All of these are posted on our events section of the website, but this is just what we've got coming up. Including Scott Wonder's tour of Wonder Woods. And, well, that's just in a couple of days. Is that Saturday? And then our rescheduled wood glue program in May. In June, we'll have a luthier here. Does everybody know what that is? Correct. All right, somebody that works with strings. I think mainly guitars though, right? I had to look it up. September, our picnic and special tour of the furniture at the Art Museum. So that's what we've got. Then we've got these classes. Again, they are all on the website, but this is what we have. The lap box, I will tell you, that's part of the Christmas toy program. So if you want to be part of that and learn some new skills, come join us for the lap box pre-build and build. Okay, just a reminder, these are our 3 primary outreach programs that we have going on this year. And Bill Shucott, raise your hand. Bill is point on the Rockwood School program, where members have built a kit of parts, and then they work with the students to put them together. I think we have at least 3 different levels of difficulty on the kits, and I got to participate last year, and it's just a lot of fun. So thank you for that. And then Wayne Humphrey. Where's Wayne? Oh, Wayne is point on the Christmas toy program. If you recall, we pivoted from our normal toy program last year because everybody still wanted to make toys, but the hospitals weren't receiving as many. So we just kind of redirected and started a major Christmas toy program, and we had almost 1,000 last year that we gave away, and that's our goal for this year. And we are now meeting regularly on the first and third Friday from 12 to 4 at the shop. Just show up. We have tasks and toys that we work on, and again, opportunity to learn some new skills. And then Tom Tierney, right here, is point on our Build a Table program for Home Sweet Home. And this is an example of one of the nightstands that was built out of reclaimed wood. So if you remember last month, I told you we got a bunch of oak from the oak people. And I say we, Tom and a group, cut them down, planed them, and has bundles in the back of his truck that you can pick up. One bundle gets a small table, 2 bundles gets a larger table. 2, yeah, whatever. And this is one of the plans that we put together as a suggestion for the table. So they will be finished and then delivered to Home Sweet Home. All right.
Yes, sir. Does the plans come with or online?
Yes, sir. They're on the website. Well, the small tables like this, those, and the coffee table, those plans I know are on the website. I'm not sure if the nightstand's been put out there yet. As Brian, you know, the nightstand table plans, have you gotten those yet?
No, I haven't.
They will be in the next couple of days.
Tom, I don't think any of them are on the website.
But if you're interested, we can make sure you get the right plan. Or you can use your own. You're not married to this plan.
Right.
This is just one that we thought would be a good recommendation if you didn't have an idea where to start. Okay? So some more member news. Okay, so the 230, 280. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Yeah, you know that? Okay. That's where we started our membership last April 1st. And this is where we were at 280 at the end of March. So that's the net. So we added a whole, but we still had a net add of almost 44 people. So I just think that's phenomenal. So I'm hoping, again, to see more and more of your faces at meetings and in classes and such. Okay, the idea of, let's see, was it last year? We had the tool swap 2 years ago? Last year. And I think everybody thought it was pretty cool. I know it was a lot of work for those that brought things, but just a show of hands if you would like to have another one this year. It's about at least half or more. So we kind of have penciled in June 18th. I'm sure it will be one of the holidays of the year.
That's in the parking lot at
did what last year?
If we can, Dave Gromfeld was going to check with Jesse and see if he allowed us to do that again. But that's where it would be, yes. And I promised to do brisket again. Okay. All right, now a little one ad. We need, yes, sir. Yeah, basically it's like a flea market of such where you pull your vehicle up, open your back end, anything you want to let go of. You can set your own prices, sell it or swap it for somebody else's items.
Same as you used to do inside here a couple of years ago.
Maybe.
You know, similar to, but this is between members.
Right.
Deals that.
Yeah, we get no cut. This is strictly member to member.
Okay, sign it on, similar.
Okay? Any other questions about the swap? Well, I'm going to get to that. Please hold. Camera person. We still need at least one, preferably two camera people for the back of the room. That way you can share duties and no one can feel like they have to do it 100% of the time. So if you're interested, please let Brian know. He's the man in the back at the camera now. But really, truly, if you could participate, that would be wonderful. It would be a big help. Then, some community outreach. There's still a lot of feedback, guys. Do I need to move? There's a bit going on with our members, including Al, raise your hand. Finished replica of the Care House. And I think I've got some pictures. It is just phenomenal. So I know Al, you were one of the key people, particularly of late, but there had been other people working on it. And it's just, it's amazing. It's just a gorgeous piece of work. And there's a nice stand that Al built and a case over it. So I would encourage you to go by the Carousel house and take a look. See if you can tell which one's which. Okay, and then Fouts Park has an African American schoolhouse on, I would say, on the grounds. It is, the parts are on the grounds, and we have at least 3 members. Let's see, Dale, Norman, Keith Lassant, and Al Carson. I think the 3 of you for sure, maybe more, working on bringing that back to life, and that will be moved when it's done. And I understand that Channel 9, Living St. Louis, is doing a story on that. So we can watch for that to hit the air soon. Okay, the other announcement is we need some new stations and some. Okay. I don't think that's, anyway, many of our hospitals that we typically donate to still aren't receiving as many toys as we've given in the past. So if anyone has an idea or another organization that we can distribute toys to, please get with Rich Weissman. Where are you? Back in the room. Is our toy committee chair, and we'll take a look and see if what we can do to keep the toys going out that you are bringing in. Okay, Wayne Humphrey sent this in to where'd it go?
Woodworking magazine.
Oh yeah, and Woodworking magazine. He sent that in, and so he's published. Made a bunch of little race cars from scrap wood, and is working on another design that they had in another issue, and that's pretty cool. So that's my member news and announcements. I'm now going to turn it over to Tom. Well, yeah, didn't you want to do this?
What is it?
It's the financials. Do you have a mic?
I do not.
So Tom Tierney is our treasurer, and Tom is going to just review the end of our fiscal year numbers. Basically, we're in really good shape.
Turn this on.
They should control it back there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Vicki. Let's see. Probably ought to, who's got the control on the slides? Oh,
Do that arrow to go forward.
how about,
On the right.
all right. Beginning balance. Has anybody seen these before? Huh. Well, are we did you get all 3 slides? We're missing the revenues. Cash and, nope. Okay, well, we got screwed up on the slides. There should be 3 slides. Okay, any rate, let's back up.
So there's operator here on my part.
Okay. Well, this tells a story, okay? We began the year with $40,000 in the bank. Last year we increased our cash position by $11,160. So right now we're sitting with $51,706 in the bank. The expenses for last year were $24,471. Here's the breakdown: classes, shop operations, other operations, which computers, anything we need in order to run the operation, to run the guild. Toy program, we spent $2,400, and the community outreach program almost $4,000. We paid for the material for the desks, the 135 desks that we built. So those are the total revenues, or expenses. Revenues were about $35,000. Most of our revenues come from membership fees and classes, the fees that people pay for the classes. We also had a pretty good year on donations. I'm sorry it's not up here to show you, but it was about $4,500. And that's the bulk of our revenues coming in. Does anybody have any questions on the financials? We do 2 audits a year. You guys ought to be aware of that. At the 6-month point, we do an audit, and then at the end of the year, we do an audit. And what? What?
That's it.
Okay, well, we got to talk about the audit a little bit. We're looking for about 2 or 3 general members to help with the audit. It takes one evening, a couple hours in the evening, and basically we go through the books, and it's just important that general members are involved in that process. So if you're interested, give me a call or just whatever, let me know.
Let anybody on the board know.
Yeah, that's good. Well, why don't you say that? Thank you.
You got to stay up here.
What for?
This is next.
What's that?
It's the nomination.
Oh, we're supposed to do the budget too. I guess you didn't get those slides. That's my fault.
Okay, so the other business part of our night is nominations for the open positions for the board. Tom led the nominating committee, and he has his report to make.
Okay, I thought you were going to talk about the committee a little bit.
Oh yeah, well, what do you want me to say? You led it, there were 2 other people on it.
That's fine. Okay, so Madam President, the nominating committee submits the following nominations. For President, Brian Ellison. Vice President, Bill Schucott. Secretary, Adam Connors. Treasurer, Tom Tierney. Director, Hal Donovan. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So the process is they go through the membership list at large, and they take a look at all our members and possible candidates. They then talk to potential candidates to see if there's interest, and if they are, then they review their qualifications and make a recommendation, which they did tonight. So we will vote on each individual position. Now, I will tell you that the vice president, secretary, and treasurer positions are the incumbents, but they still have to be elected each year because it is an annual term. So I start with asking, yes? Well, can't exactly do that. There was a motion to accept the list of candidates as presented, but I do have to ask for nominations from the floor for each position. And then we vote on each position one at a time. So, president, the role of president, it's a one-year term. Are there any nominations from the floor for a candidate that has to be present and has to accept the nomination? Okay, there were no nominations from the floor. So by show of hands, all in favor of Brian Ellison, who's our cameraman, which is why we need a new cameraman, please raise your hand. Okay, I read that as pretty much unanimous. Okay, congratulations, Brian. Next up is the vice president position. Bill Shucott is the incumbent. Bill, you want to raise your hand? Are there any nominations from the floor for the position of vice president? Hearing none, I will call for a show of hand vote for Bill as vice president. Okay, pretty unanimous again. No, vote once, just vote once. Congratulations, Bill. For the position of secretary, again, a one-year term. Adam Connors, who is the incumbent, is working, I think, in Florida. We're for Nassau right now. Are there any nominations from the floor? Hearing none, I will call for a show of hand vote for Adam Connors for secretary. All right, another, I keep wanting to saying anonymous, but unanimous vote. Okay, congratulations to Adam. Next position is treasurer. Again, a one-year term. Tom Tierney is the incumbent. Are there any nominations from the floor? Nominations from the floor. A show of hands vote for Tom Tierney as treasurer. Okay, another unanimous vote. So thank you, Tom. And then we have 4 directors that are on the board, and it's a 4-year term, and one rolls off every year. So that's why we just have one open position this year. And it is, I think, Dan Sudekamp's position. And the committee has nominated Hal Donovan, one of our AV dudes. Are there any nominations from the floor? All right, with no nominations from the floor, show of hands for support of Hal Donovan as director. All right, thank you. Another unanimous vote. So, Brian, if you would come up for a moment. You know, you'd think a woodworking organization would have a wooden gavel that I could hand over, but apparently we don't. So the best I could do is give you the computer bag.
All right, thank you.
And congratulations.
Thanks.
Now, back to the camera. Any words? Do you want to say any words?
Not really.
Okay. No words. All right, moving on. Okay, so show and tell. Oh, yes, question?
You passed up something earlier I didn't get a chance to ask.
I'm sorry?
No,
What?
go back for a while, but like to see a particular shop done class,
Uh-huh.
but we don't know who might be willing to teach it. Is there a way to submit that? For example, I'd like to take a basic turning class from somebody that knows.
Okay.
How do I go about asking?
Okay. So let me just repeat the question. The question is, if there is a class that we're not currently offering, but there's interest, how can that be submitted? Brad, do you want to answer? Did you want to answer?
No, well, I jumped to his
The question was specifically about turning.
just to mention I've taught about 4 or 5 classes here, turning, ball, and ring, and I have been asked if I would consider doing additional ones in the future, so I probably will in the next year.
I need something basic up here.
Yes, I will. So Brad has taught some turning classes in the past and has done a great job, and they've been well received. And we are asking him to do another one, at least. But there is a venue for making recommendations for classes. We're working to put a place on the website for recommendations, and then you can always talk to Bill Shucott, our in charge of programs and
It's
classes.
a real simple procedure. Send an email to vice president at SLWG.org and say what class you want, and I'll drum up somebody to teach the class, and away we go.
And on that point, as I said, we've got a lot of new people and new members, and a lot of those members are more inexperienced members, but we also have new members that are very experienced. And we would love for you with the experience, to consider teaching a class that maybe shines your skill set. So again, send an email to Vice President at SLW whatever it is. It's on the web. And
She's president and she doesn't know. That's great.
not anymore. I think I'm over. All right, over. Anyway, we do want to keep the material relevant and the classes of interest to our members. So please submit, and if you know of someone that you'd like to teach it. Okay. Yes? Sure.
Do we have anything that's what skill sets exist within our group that
Do we have
I'll get it. Okay.
anything that kind of
Who asked the question?
primary area of expertise? When members sign up, I think we try to capture that. What David's doing with it, I can't swear, but I know we do not have it on all members. So if you have a skill set and want to put yourself out there, you might also talk to John Bronson, who leads our mentoring program. Often he will get people signing up to be a mentee looking for some skill sets. So he's trying to do the matching of expert with the person to learn.
I'm also thinking that, if I knew that these 4 guys were great at CNC routing and I wanted more guys to talk about CNC routing with
Sure.
them, I could do that.
Sure.
So,
You want to take that on? Try to put that database together?
a survey, yeah, I'll take it on.
That'd be great. Okay. Thank you.
I'm also working on that web page, but I'm having problems getting it to fall into the right spot. So it should be up maybe by the next meeting. I should have it up.
Great. To capture that skill set information?
Yeah, to do that, and if anybody has any questions, if they want to teach a class, if they want to take a class, we can put all that information in there, and it's going to go to the email group, not to general people like the forum does.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian. Brian's also our webmaster. So that's another position. I don't know if you're going to be able to continue. Maybe. So if someone has mastering skill sets, I'm sure Brian would be able to guide you to fill in behind him. All right, so let's go to show and tell. So this is a picture of,
Vicki, I'm going to interrupt you. I like to interrupt you, so I'm going to interrupt you. One more item before we go to show and tell.
okay. I see
Vicki,
a
you've done a
gavel.
fabulous job, and everybody appreciates it. You're a little bossy at times, but in spite of that,
I warned you.
here's a little commemoration, not for passing on the gavel,
No.
but for you.
Thank you.
To thank you for all the work you've done. You've done a fabulous job, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Are hugs allowed?
Hugs allowed.
Thank you. Thank you. I will. I got my gavel, but it's mine. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, let me set it here for the moment. But this is one of the nightstands that we will be donating to Home Sweet Home. It's pretty nice. It's really nice. I think it's going to still be finished, but that's one, and then just some pictures. So who's first on the list? Somebody read me the name.
Everybody who has something to show, come on up.
Right here.
Line up right behind you.
I'm making nervous with you. Whoever's willing to go next. Right here. I'm gonna put the mic down.
Try to do it north.
Lights on.
Oh. Okay. Looking for Charlie.
Phoebe, I built the cabinet, and as a precursor to building this, I saw on YouTube somebody had put together these little things, which are really interesting to build, and they're interesting to try to figure out. They're also great to put on the coffee table and put your cup of coffee on it. It seems to make adults stare and young kids cry, so they're rather interesting. But I thought, if you can do this with tensioning, can you do the same thing with a cabinet and get it to suspend within a framework? So I played with this for about a year and several new words in my vocabulary. But the whole interesting thing about it was to get the cables tensioned so that the cabinet will stay reasonably stable and be usable. And I'm not really satisfied with the way it came out. Or, well, let's put it this way. There's some work to be done, and I'm not sure what the next iteration on this will be. But it was just interesting to try to get this whole thing stabilized and work fairly well. As you can see, there's still some give in this, and the whole problem is tensioning the cables just right, and that has still got to be refined. So maybe in another year or so, because it took me about that to make this one, I can come back with a more refined one, and we'll try it from there and see if I can come up with some new vocabulary words. Yeah. Yeah. That,
Did you adjust the tension?
well, that was the interesting part. I actually, let me borrow this. I actually made some supports that went in the top and the bottom for the distancing I wanted, and then I tried to pull the cables through and clamp them, and that had to be a little bit persnickety, and I actually pulled a couple of the cables out. So I've got to find a little better way to do that, and if I can do that, then hopefully I can scale this up and make it a lot more interesting project. Hope so.
This was a project. I'm one of 8 kids. I have a sister who loves to send me pictures from the internet. She surfs all the time looking for woodworking things. She sent me a picture of a Rolly toy she had seen that she thought was just really cool. And I immediately flunked it because I said, that's a lot of work. I don't know if I want to mess with that. But then after I thought about it for a while, I said, I have never really, in many years, done any bent wood laminates to see how I could do it. So I took the project on. It's a great little rolly toy that makes lots of noise when little kids roll it across the floor. The trick on this one, or the really hard part, is making the bent wood laminate. I made a mold with what I wanted the shape to be. I planed out, this is actually 4 laminates, 2 red oak, a black walnut, and a red oak. I put them in the frame, glued it all up, clamped a lot of pressure on them to keep them in there. And the concern I had was, would I get any spring back? So this was actually, the frame was true to the shape I wanted, and I got about a 1/16 of an inch spring back on each one with the 4 layers, which was pretty close on to what I was hoping for. So that's what made this project kind of fun. It's really just meant to be really noisy. All of the parts, again, I'm one of 8. I have lots of nieces and nephews and stuff. All of the parts are made of wood that's harder than what you would find in your normal house. So when the little kid runs this into the wall, it's going to win. So, walnut, maple, cherry, white, and red oak. And it's the first time I've done a laminate like that. I did not steam. I planed them down to about 0.09 inch, less than 1/10 of an inch. I put Titebond 2 on all 4 pieces. I put them in the mold, clamped the end one, and then just worked toward the other end. And they actually took the shape pretty well. I think if it was anything more than 1/10 of an inch per layer, you would either have to steam or it would have been more pressure than what I was ready to use. They both are the same, which works really nice because in the mold, you just make 2 of the same, and they work pretty good. So it's only 1 mold.
And to be fair, this is Bob's. You remember our build a contest?
This was my entry for the Build a Thing contest because it was a thing, and I don't remember what he had to use 5 board feet or something.
Yeah,
and
I don't.
if you count my mold, it probably comes out.
It was David Zeman's contest, so that's why I didn't officially put it on the agenda for tonight. But this was, so far you are 1, and I believe there's 1 more
There's
entry.
2. So.
You might have a chance at winning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of weeks ago, I picked up a hint off of Facebook. Got some guys from Europe who post on there occasionally, and they do some interesting things. And one of the suggestions they made was dyeing wood, and they were not using the standard dyes that you and I are probably familiar with, but they were dyeing wood with Kool-Aid. So I sent the wife to the store to get a nickel package of Kool-Aid like I had when I was a kid, and they're a quarter. But she got 3 different flavors, and I took that Kool-Aid package and mixed them up with tap water, hot tap water straight out of the water heater. That's all you need is 120 degrees, in a plastic cottage cheese container about that tall, that big around, and it makes a pretty good dye. I ran 3 different batches. I put these in for 2 hours, 24 hours, 8 hours. And honestly, when you look at them, you can't tell much difference between the 2 hours and the 24 hours. These, what's in the bag here is some pine and some poplar on all of these. You can take a look at them, but instead of buying some of the more expensive dyes that you're probably going to have to mail order, the Kool-Aid seems to be working pretty well. And if you want to learn more about dyes, stains, and paints, Scroll Saw Woodworking magazine in the latest issue has a pretty good article in here. So, yes.
Did you cut into the wood to see how far the Kool-Aid dye went?
No, I didn't, but I did sand some edges that raised up from exposure to the water, and I didn't hit white wood very easy. And what I did on these, I put a coating of urethane over the top of it, just so that if they get wet, they're not going to bleed all over everything.
Poplar is known to be a very blotchy wood. I know these are kind of small pieces that you might not notice, blotchiness and so on. But did it seem to take up the dye uniformly?
There's a little bit of blotchiness on some of the pieces. Do you have a problem with getting blotchiness, particularly in poplar? And there is a little bit of blotchiness that went on some of these, but some of that comes from the fact that this wood wants to float in your container, and every 15 minutes you need to go over and shake this thing, or either that or figure out some way to set something on top of your little wood pieces to force them down into the liquid. But I did have that problem on the 24-hour ones, and some of them were kind of right down the middle where they were floating above the surface and below. So.
I would just add that I bet those guys in Europe got the idea for Kool-Aid from their friends who knit, because using Kool-Aid to dye yarn is a very popular thing to do.
I'm one step behind the knitters.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, did you use a vacuum chamber on it, or did you just put it in something?
No, I just put it in a plastic container and dropped them in there.
I've used
But
vacuum chambers before, and I've got like a net that I put on top of it with springs that help hold it down.
yeah, a vacuum chamber and some netting help hold the parts down. There'd be any number of things you could do like that. Just put them in a Ziploc bag maybe, and you know, push all the air out of the Ziploc bag and close it.
Cell and closed cell wood. I noticed you had nothing but open cell woods to this. The dye went in very good, but on a closed cell wood, does that take much longer to do?
I don't know. You'd have to play around with it. I work with poplar, I work with pine, and so that's what I was interested in trying.
Okay,
All right.
let's keep moving. Next.
I'm Dale Norman, and these are my covered bridges. You guys will remember, some of the older people did, I did a program here on covered bridges. Then I started looking for patterns. And the guy that made these was a good artist. I'm not sure he's a good pattern maker, but he was a good artist. I'll tell you the rest of the story in a minute. This takes time and patience, especially when you're an old man and your eyes are bad. This one I've got about somewhere around 80 hours in. And I learned, cut about an hour in the morning and about an hour in the afternoon. This is where the patience comes in. If you rush it, you'll make a mistake. And also the pins came out and I had to do this. This is the second one. This one I was busy cutting, and this piece above the portal, as I was making the final cut on it, came out in my hands. So we had to redraw the artist's work. That took me a while and a lot of whiteout. But again, about the same amount of hours. This is on a 1/4-inch Baltic birch plywood. I'm not a great framer. This is my first try at it, but I got them framed and pretty proud of them. Thank you.
Bill, our vice president, asked me if I would teach a class later this year on some type of project build. And he didn't give me any clear direction that I needed to go. So I told him I'd done a number of boxes and recently had purchased Don Snyder's veneer bag and pump, which he had for sale online. Let it set for about 6 months and also got a packet of some leftover veneer that Don had. And I finally got inspired to pull it out and use it. And so I decided that I would do a class. I'm not an entire newbie to veneering, but do a class in the fall in November on veneering a jewelry box. So I brought 2 boxes in tonight. One is a box that's cherry with maple accent that's solid wood. And I did inlay on that. I built a couple different boxes like that over the past few years, did some sand shading. Some of that was using some of the skills that I learned over at Mark Adams. And Jay has taken some of those classes and shown pieces. And I used some of that technique with the veneer boxes that I did. And so the first thing that I had to decide was how I wanted to place some of the veneer samples against each other. And so I chose to use a burl piece for the top and frame it in. That's this box over here on the left. Frame it in with maple. As it turns out, and I'm going to say this to our speaker tonight, my wife had run into a guy who repairs pianos, and I'm embarrassed that I don't know the guy's or can't come up with the guy's name, but he invited me to come over, and he had some old maple posts that were part of what he thought was a late 19th century piano. And so I cleaned up that wood. It was varnished over. I, again, think it was structural on the inside of the piano. And I brought a piece of it. I used it for all of the framing and the capping on the wall, on the top and bottom of the box. And this has to be some of the tightest grain maple or any species of wood that I've seen. This is truly old growth wood that had to fight for its existence and grew super slowly and created very dense rings. And so if you're interested and want to take just a peek at this, the other thing that was in some of that wood was some really interesting grain and bird's eye. So the tray on the inside was made out of this old growth maple. And the box itself, the wood that's on there, I don't know. I think it's some type of engineered wood. The pull was made out of African black wood, and I just decided on a shape that was pleasing to me. And then on the trays inside this, they're lined with suede, and I used some accenting colors to pick off the cherry on the top with the tray dividers, and use the same on the keys, which are both structural and decorative to these boxes. And the box sits on OG bracket feet. Some of you probably have seen me bring period furniture in here. That was a common foot that was done on period furniture, and it really micro-sized lends itself well to doing boxes like this. And then the finish on this box is shellac, and I have in the past, and I would once again encourage anybody that hasn't worked with shellac to consider giving it a try. It's the finish that's on both of these boxes. Some of these parts get pre-finished. Some of the woods, especially the exotics, will bleed into lighter colored wood, and so you have to pre-finish those. If you don't want that to happen, it can be really, really a messy thing. So the first weekend in November, Bill told me that weekend classes rather than multi-weekend, which honestly, if you're as slow as I am, would take to build this. But I'm gonna try to have up to 6 students build a box similar to this. And I'm probably gonna do a lot of the veneering ahead of time, but bring the equipment in so the panels are ready to go. There's still lots of work that's done in putting these together. I'll probably do some of the work on the feet as well. And I think we can easily fill up 2 days, and not even sure with that people can go home with a completely finished. The last thing, the hinges on this are Brusso's stopped hinges. And I did get the green light from Bill to go ahead and purchase up to 6 pairs of those. So I'm going to try to come up with something quicker than what I did, which was
to pretty much hand mortise these, so I'll probably try to make up a jig. But it's an interesting little project that encompasses a lot of woodworking skill, and I think even if somebody doesn't have a lot of experience, it might be a fun thing to do. And I believe that that's all I have to say about this. And then I was asked by Jerry to make a comment on sandpaper that he brought in that's available for people. Back to the box. Anybody have any questions about these? Yes.
The walls, the box itself, was that cut out of the maple board showing us there?
The which again?
The box itself. How thick is your wall?
So, yeah, you're asking what parts were cut out of the old growth maple?
Yeah, did the walls, were they
For
cut
this,
out of
yes. And you can see some of the bird's eye formation on these, on the insert. And then this cap that went around the actual, or the frame, I should call it, over the lid, and then the top and bottom caps on the actual walls of the box are from that old growth maple.
So you did that by running it through a bandsaw then?
So I resawed it, I squared it up, cleaned it up, decided what was usable. It had some holes and structural and bolts and things like that that had been used. But once I cleaned it up, then I bandsawed it, and I have a small parts tray that I run through my joiner because you don't need to limit how thin the material is. I think usually if you're down 3/8 of an inch or smaller, you really want to put it on a liner that's got a stop. So I have a long board that I run through a planer, and I can take parts down to pretty thin. And a lot of this stuff has splines to support the way these caps fit on the plywood. I use some nails that are made out of aluminum that I sharpen to put on the feet so that they register with the bottom. And then I use 5-minute epoxy and do 2 at a time. A lot of the other stuff is done with a type of veneer glue, and then I used hide glue for some of this as well. So a variety of glues, a variety of techniques involved. Were there any other questions?
Beautiful, thank you.
Nope. Thank you. Oh.
Can you pick up the inlaid one so we can
Yeah.
get a picture?
Yeah, so this was the surface of the veneered panel. And that usually you want to put something that is quite catching to the eye to kind of draw you in, and then something contrasting on the inside to make it interesting when you lift a lid. This was cherry again against maple, same feet, and the inside didn't have any kind of special decoration on it. And then Jerry said, Jerry, your sandpaper, he's got sheets up here at the end. And Jerry, what grit is this? I don't.
Said 150.
150.
Jerry, we can use some out at the shop if you want to drop some off there.
Oh, and lastly,
Okay.
these were a couple of the veneered panels, if you want to look. This is 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood that is pretty defect-free, much more so than what you'd get at big box stores, and a little bit of the stuff that'll support the floor and some of the miter joinery on it. This one's got shellac that hasn't been buffed out on it. Thank you. I'm gonna go around. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Well, I was going to do something really death-defying and, get everybody's attention to try to watch me walk up the steps. And having done it 3 times a day from my basement coming up, I thought, no, 2 steps too many. So I wanted to show this actually is going to fold very nicely in with what Brad just got through with. Because it's a far simpler process, but at the same time, I have a question. Has anybody ever made one of these out here? Just for a show of hands, I'm just curious. All right. You know, it's a fun project, and that's the beauty of woodworking, because we can get incredibly involved in certain ones, and they'll take your time. This is a fun project from the standpoint of just being able to look for, start it off and look for something that's going to be, entertaining to somebody to whom you bequeath this. And among my first ones I ever did was out at the Endangered Wolf Center in Eureka. And the nice lady out there said, "We'd like you to make a checkerboard. Could you make one that's roughly 28 inches across?" Yeah, that was my, really? And the reason for this being, they wanted to do it, they had larger pieces that they were using for checkers, but they wanted to do it for kids during Wolf Fest, which is held in October out there, and they have all sorts of games for them. But they wanted, if they were going to attract them to a table, they wanted to make sure this was big enough for everybody to see. So that's what I made. I did not make it of this, which this happens to be some very nice walnut. And a lot of people will put maple with it. I prefer ash. And they work very nicely together. But if you do a 28-inch one, I would have needed somebody, to haul it with me there, so it just follows along on wheels. I didn't want to go that far. And possibly the other one that I'm working on that's going to follow this one, which I wanted something light, but something a little bit out of the ordinary. So it's some spalted hackberry. And I'm marrying that up with some Purple Heart. Yeah, it's going to be interesting when it's done. I've already seen it next to each other. I think it's going to look very nice. But with these come surprises. Of course, that's nothing for us as woodworkers to know there's going to be surprises with this. And one of the first things out of surprises is just what Brad was talking about, is you get it started, what wood am I going to use? And what do I even start to do? Begin a project. Well, this one, there are certain ones that are just kind of in the mainstream, but there are others that are not. And you can be very simple and very complicated with it. What happens with these, though, is like with most projects, they can be fraught with little issues that you don't know until you get into it. And it starts back at, what wood did I pick? Okay, I got a light wood, and it's something like poplar, it's something like pine, it's something nice and simple, and I've got it right here. I can buy it down at the store. But I was in this other store, and they had something really nice, like, things like Jatoba, Brazilian cherry. If anybody's familiar ever playing with that, it's like playing with a rock, okay? A few other things, Honduran rosewood or something like that. It's just beautiful. They will go nicely together, except you can't do that. But you don't know you can't do that until you get to just about this step here. And you've now glued it, and now you're going to sand it. There's a lot of sanding involved. As soon as you try to sand it, you will find almost exclusively you will start to divot, and you will start scratching the light, softer wood. You can't put those together. But you don't know that until you get there, and that's one of the first surprises. So the beauty is to learn a little bit about the whole kind of the element of Janka hardness. And everybody knows about Janka, but it's necessary to keep, it doesn't make any difference where you go on the scale, as long as you keep the two species close to each other, within several hundred points there. Because if you're on the opposite ends of that, you will tear it up every time. And
Density layers, or about silicon,
this will be the density. This is purely the density. This is going to be the, the far end where you have your cocobellos, you've got your, some of those harder woods that, once once that steel ball tries to go into it, we're talking upwards of 2,200, 2,600, almost 3,000 pounds to do it with something that you could just about do it with your fingernail. So it will, but that surprise element that comes into this, I wanted to bring it up simply because I knew I was going to avoid that here a little bit. The other part is that this is part of a plug for a class that I'm giving that wasn't on your sheet up there, which is okay. It is on the website. It is on the those to be given. It is scheduled for May 1st, which is a Sunday, and it's 1 to 4 in the afternoon, and it's being held at my shop. And I live in Ellisville, so I'm not sure how close it is to everybody, but I have some room in that class for anybody else who would be interested, who hasn't done one of these or wants to see what I like to call how not to make one of these. Because believe me, there's too many of the little bitty things that can just jump out and grab you. So I just wanted you to know that there is a class coming up, and it's in there. And with that, I'm going to wheel myself back. Except I have a question.
What is the perimeter wood?
This is quarter sawn white oak.
White oak. Okay. And are the squares interlocked?
There's a good question. And I said, that's part of the secret. You almost have to come to the class and find out. Because I'm going to tell you what I would have told you otherwise, which is what you need to do is 64 pieces. You need to pocket hole 2 of them on every side and be able to get it into the one next to it.
That would fall apart.
Oh, it would, yeah. A heartbeat. But yes, they are glued. And it's a fun process. And
We can keep going.
we can just go. I know you've got a whole bunch of things, and let's do it.
All right.
Okay.
You got a couple more?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is my entry into the woodworking contest that Vicki spoke about, that was announced in November, where you make one project out of 5 1/3 board feet of lumber. And so I chose to make a child's chair. It's original design. The design did change through the build in order to be compliant to the material use. But it's made of white oak. The joinery is mortise and tenon. Most of the tenons are through tenons. The rear legs are tapered, bent lamination. The back supports are bent lamination and stay true to the form. Then I made the front legs out of just lamination. The seat was designed such that it looks like it's floating, but it's a scoop seat, which I use a table saw to scoop. And every piece on here has a curve to it. The design was as much fun as it was to build. So, see it.
I normally don't do flat things. I'm a wood turner as a primary interest, but I took the challenge of one of those bundles of wood that we got from the American Fodor Barrel Company. So these guys start with 2-inch thick by 8 inches wide by 10-foot long pieces of pretty good quality white oak. They cut them down to about 6 inches. They put tongue and grooves on the edges. They run it through a machine to curve the sides so that when you look at the barrel, it's smooth. It's not a bunch of flat pieces. And the pieces they cut off are what we get for this and this. So I took the plans, they've been shared around. This was the simplest of the plans. That's why I chose it, and the smallest. Because, doing flat work in a shop that doesn't have set up for that is not easy. You're always a space issue. The plans called for pinning the legs to the cross members. Underneath is just an X. And I thought about trying to drill 4 holes at each corner and having them match exactly. And I didn't know how to do that. So what I did was I built a tenon by taking the cross pieces and laminating pieces onto the side, and then for the mortise, and then I cut tenons on the legs to fit in. So I found that to be an approach that I could do in my shop. But turned out a pretty nice looking little table. It's finished with polyurethane.
Are you gonna make some more?
I cut pieces of wood out in Tom's truck. You'll find there were 21 sets of bundles of wood. One bundle will do this table plus about 50% excess. I've gathered up extra pieces today when we put those bundles together, and so I'll do a second one to have a mate to this. So the company is, the name Foder means in Flemish wood barrel. In the part of Belgium called the Flemish part, they make a beer that is fermented in wood barrels. So there's a trend now for all these craft breweries, and they're wanting to experiment with making different kinds of beers. And so they want this wood tub, and the tub is, 10 foot by 10 foot. So, that's not just a little thing. So their offcuts are our treasure. Yep. Thank you.
Show and tell teaser from Jay.
So first of all, I want to our actual speaker tonight because we've taken up way too much time. So I'm going to keep my presentation very short. But the teaser is I'm going to actually give the presentation in September. So we'll try to keep my comments to the minimum and your questions a little bit to the minimum. But a lot of you know that I'm an old furniture aficionado. I don't like contemporary things. And I've been to many classes at Mark Adams. There is an organization in the country called the Society of American Period Furniture Makers. Is that the right title, Brad? And a person who has gotten the very esteemed Cartouche Award, which is very esteemed of those people who do that kind of thing, is Alf Sharp. I kept seeing his name at Mark Adams as a presenter, maybe every other year or so, and I really wanted to work with him. So I tried a couple times, and my classes got canceled, one of them for COVID, one of them for some other reason. And finally, there was a class to do the middle one. It's kind of a photo of a very large dresser. It's called a bow front dresser. You saw an example of lamination as a way of making bending wood. You can steam bend it, but you can also just make a great big honker piece of wood and cut it to that shape and so on. And that's what this bow front is. So you don't really notice, but the middle of each of the drawer fronts is about 3 inches thick. And then the outside goes down to maybe 3/4 of an inch or whatever. That was made out of cherry. And there's a company called Ball & Ball, which makes period-specific hardware. And in fact, even this is a George Hepplewhite. This is called a Hepplewhite design, and that's going to be part of my presentation in September that will talk a little bit more about that and what that means and who he was. So I chose to make mine out of walnut instead of cherry. Very intense work to begin with. and then a lot of piddling over the next several months. But overall, really about a 10-month period before I finally got it completely done. So that if you notice, the hardware looks a little bit like the hardware on the Cherry one too, because it's from ball and ball. And it's a Heppel white design kind of furniture. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about the build because we're going to go through in detail the actual build of this this large dresser. It's about 4 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and about 3 feet tall. And if you can imagine those drawer fronts being 3 inches thick, if you put all the drawers in that sucker, and you're going to have trouble. It might take 4 people, one on each corner, to lift it and so on. I'm pretty happy. There's a lot of things I would have done differently, and I learned a lot in doing it and so on. So there, I guess you can't zoom in or anything like that. But there is line inlay around the outside of each of the drawers, and they're hard to see here. There's an elliptical inlay at the bottom, and there's little fan inlays on each corner of each of the drawers and so on. The top, I experienced problems with sapwood and heartwood with the top, and learned ways of kind of hiding that by dyes, stains, and the actual finish is actually garnet shellac, 3 coats, and then waxed and so on with some extra attention to the getting rid of the sapwood and so on and blending it in, which I think came out pretty well then. So the feet are called French feet. They point forward as well as outward, and that's all one piece of wood for each of the corners and so on. So I'm going to stop right there. But again, we're going to have a more detailed presentation in September. That will be the September meeting. But if you have any upfront questions right now, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
You mentioned Ball, the hardware company. Are they
Yeah.
local here in St. Louis?
No, they are in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I learned about it through Alf Sharp and so on, and a very delightful lady named Pam. I learned after talking with her, because I kept asking for her because she was very knowledgeable. Guess what her last name was? Ball. So she's one of the owners, I'm sure. She knew what she was talking about, though. Any other questions? So we'll save a lot of questions then for our September meeting.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
The couple. Up. Okay. Okay. Bill, did you want to? Okay, Joe. Welcome, Joe. I don't have any bio on you other than I know that your company
Sure. Oh, I've got
is-
some handouts
is
that
local.
are going out.
And it's a family business, I understand, right?
Yes, it is. There's 20 of us. It's run by myself, my wife, and my mother. She's been working with me in the finish department. We own a company called Jackson Pianos, and we specialize in rebuilding pianos from yesteryear. We don't sell anything new. Everything we do is rebuilt pianos. We take pianos and we gut them down to basically sticks, and then we rebuild them up. So we will duplicate parts. We create soundboards. We redesign actions and create actions. And we focus on taking the pianos that would be going to dumpsters and fixing them. Currently we have, in my personal selection, I've got about 180 pianos that are mine. In addition, we work on around 9,000 clients around the country. And we typically go through about 350 refurbishments a year. So we do a lot. We've got some pictures. This was, by the way, thank you. This was amazing. What you guys create is fantastic. And I am so glad that I made it through all of that because it's so rare that I get to meet people who geek out on wood. And while what I work on is our instruments, it's just wood. So it was really nice. And the ball, whoever we're there. I'm really excited about that because we are constantly looking for historic hardware. This example right here, this is an 1862 Hackenspiel from Dresden, Germany. If you want to, this one we're actually just started working on. This is shellac. All of the old finishes were shellac. We specialize in shellac. We use shellac as one of our primary finishing agents. All of our pianos have at least a shellac base, and then a lot of them will do waterborne on top of that. We don't use any nitrocellulose lacquers. We don't use any pre-cat lacquers. We only use waterborne polys that we get from Italy, from a company called Malazzi. So our goal is to be as eco-friendly as possible. So all of our finishes are no VOCs, and they all start with the shellac base. A lot of them just finish with shellac as well. So this one is actually going to be French polished. If you want to kind of...
The clicker right there in front of you.
Oh, wonderful. I need my glasses because I'm blind as a bat. Okay, there we go. This direction. Okay, so, and I aim it which direction?
Anything's fine. Just click it. Is it working?
Oh, there it goes. Okay, so these are some damaged areas. This finish is the original finish from 150 plus years ago. And all of these areas that are worn in, we'll actually use shellac dabbing, and we'll get in, and we'll clean it off, de-wax it, get all of the gunk off, and then we'll work shellacs in, and then we'll build them up really tall, and then we French polish that all out, and we'll glide all that over and recreate the original finish by first purifying all the gunk out of it and then remelting the entire finish. This piano, that's upside down, is going to take us about 75 hours of French polishing. So it's a lot, and it's usually 2 or 3 people at a time. You could see some of like the damage from past. I wish, this one we just started, I don't think I have any, there's the front of it. The legs, the interesting thing about this, at that period in time, those legs, so a piano like this weighs around 800 pounds. Okay, so the legs are actually screws. So they come apart in 3 pieces. So when you take the leg off, you turn it, and there's a giant screw, wood screw in the center of it, and then it pulls into 3 different pieces, almost like a child's toy. And then so when you put it back together, all the pieces come together, and there's about I'd say it's maybe a 3-inch dowel in the center of it, of rock maple, okay? So that's one of the ones that all of these damaged areas we're going to melt down. I don't know what you would call this. We call this an ice cream cone leg. I don't know what the term would be. So here's just, yeah, these are just all damaged areas. All of that crinkling, we will melt all of that away again. The hardest part about doing a job like this is just getting all the dirt and pledge and waxes out first. Because when you have to melt a 150-year-old shellac finish down, you have to get everything out. Because if you don't, you melt it in there, and then you get this hazy, garbly look. And that is honestly the hardest part, is just keep making sure that you get it all off. So we usually will de-wax it, and then we'll gently sand off the top layer until it looks like we've gotten past everything, leaving as much on as we possibly can. This one is going to be a garnet shellac. We mix and make all of our own shellacs. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the Shellac Shack. That's where we get all of our stuff. There's probably other places around, but I've been going there for the last 20 years, and I really enjoy the products that they have. We use no wax shellacs, de-wax shellac. We don't use the waxed. Do you want to jump over to one of the other ones? So that's the Hackenspiel. Now this one is a piano I drove down to Texas to pick up for a client. This piano is from 1900. It was his grandfather's. His grandfather, back in like 1910, came across from Mexico in the United States. A family put him up. They were immigrants, and the family gave him this piano. And so this went through generation after generation, And finally, they asked us to go down to Texas and pick it up. And we went down there, and we can just, am I doing it or are you doing it? Oh, okay. Yeah, just keep on flying then, yeah. So these are actually photos that we keep for books that we make for our clients. And we take about 1,000 photos of every piano. This one has not been edited down yet, so there's a whole lot of technical ones that we take just because when we have to do placement, we have to know exactly where everything goes. So this piano has absolutely no value. That's what most of the pianos we end up working on have, no financial value. What they have is sentimental value. These mean a lot to people, and these rebuilds get very, very expensive. Like this one right here was almost $50,000 when he was done. Yeah, and that's not uncommon because this piano, you see the inside, this is called an action, okay? So they don't make any of these parts anymore. So when we enter a piano like this, we have to, number one, we have to redesign and build case parts that will match it because you can't go to a store to get any of this stuff. And secondly, we have to redesign and order parts to build an action out. So we measure the entire thing out, and then we have to order what we can order, then make what we have to make. So the internal rails on these are all rock maple. The parts are typically hornbeam or maple for all of these internal working parts. The cases on all pianos are going to be veneered, and they're usually a hardwood underneath it, oak, something like that. This one was all lead. That was all lead paint. The original shellac finish underneath it was shellac, but this white stuff on the outside of it was lead, and we always hate when that happens. You test it, and once that strip turns pink, everybody jumps back, and hazmat suits go on, and that's when you got to really take care. We try to avoid doing any work that involves lead removal because it's arduous and risky, and we don't like to do it. So you can keep on plowing through. These are just more parts. It's called a fall board. If you look at the, did we send out the handout yet? Okay, if you look at the handout, you can kind of see all the different parts that are inside of a piano. This was an Everett. Once again, nothing worth, nothing that you would normally spend that kind of money on. These are all just parts. You can see the original shellac underneath right here. I think it was, I think this was when we stripped it all down. It might have been a walnut. I can't remember. This is just some of the weird hinge work. These are inlays in the front. The keys, of course, that's a cigarette burn and more cigarette burns. Lots of pest damage. The legs were a pain because when we restore a piano like this, they don't want you to replace parts unless you have to. So things like the legs, we have to use dental tools to first get everything out, and then we have to rebuild the leg back up. And we usually use epoxies to rebuild it and reform all the little parts that are missing. A leg could easily take us 20 hours, 25 hours, depending on how ornate it is, from stripping it to spraying it and shellacking it. These are more of the parts, and that's our shop in the background. We have two shops, actually. We have one in the Central West End that's 10,000 square feet, and that's where we do the bulk of our work. And then we have another one in Old North that's 20,000 square feet, and that's where we run our moving department. And we're moving our building department over there over the next 3 years. So these are all, this is called the strong back, and then inside of that is the soundboard. The soundboard is Sitka spruce. It's musical grade spruce. I don't know if anyone here has ever utilized musical grade woods before. Okay, so the thing to know about musical grade wood is it's expensive. Musical grade Sitka spruce is about last time I looked, $280 a linear foot. $280 a linear foot. It's not cheap. White Canadian is like $160. It's incredibly expensive. Germany is where we get most of it, and they have all their musical grade spruce trees on a 100-year cycle. So they plant them and they have them. Yeah, They plant one and then they have it scheduled for 100 years that they cut it. And they've been doing this for the last 150 years. They are the premier place to get musical grade wood. It's really insane. And they grow, musical grade spruce has got to be grown at an angle with the wind primarily going one direction, because the grain has got to grow in the one direction you need to fight, because this piano, when it's done being strung, is under about 14 tons of pressure. So the soundboard is about a ½ inch thick, and these ribs are all of that is spruce. And it is engineered to handle a lot of weight and to last usually 100 to 150 years. So it's a very, very high quality wood. The back, all of this, typically is oak. Once a year, we do a fire sale at our other building. We try to restore as many pianos as we can, but the ones that we can't, we don't want to just throw them in the trash. So what we do is we'll chop all of the strong backs and we'll pull them all apart and we line them up in sections and we sell it for dirt cheap. It's just basically a way to kind of not lose all the labor for chopping these things up instead of throwing them into dumpsters. So that's something we can give you a heads up next time we do that. We usually will end up destroying 20 pianos. We stack them all up, and then it's all there, and it's, you know, $50 will get you enough wood to build a house of old growth, you know, usually maples and oaks, things like that, and some hornbeam. This is us taking measurements because we're about to pull the whole harp out. You can keep on flying through there if you want. Fly, 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 fly. It's, yeah, just more technical stuff. These are all photos we need to take because we go through it inch by inch. This one had a rosewood cover right there, Brazilian rosewood. Brazilian rosewood was really popular in piano making. You know, I believe it's endangered now. I don't, yeah. But I had a Mason in Hamlin a few years back that was beautiful Greek keyed cabinet with all Brazilian rosewood. And we thought it was black when it came in. And then we started stripping it down with just alcohol just to see, and it was all rosewood. It was amazing. Like, this piano would probably cost a fortune to veneer like that now. I mean, you couldn't, but the price of the piano went through the roof after we found out that it was not, in fact, black. This is what we brought this particular piano down to, just a box. So you keep on flying, keep on flying. There's the leg. These are all technical things we have to do because, when we're, like I said, when we're stripping it, sometimes things fall apart. And we have to go back to a photo and say, oh, God, before this thing fell into 6 pieces, what did it look like? And also, this job will take a year from start to finish because we have all the different departments that have to do their own thing. So when they're done dismantling this, they're not going to see this piano for, or these parts for 5, 6, 7 months. So they have to be really careful because when they reassemble this and do all the joints over again, they can't remember what it looked like any longer. They have to just go to these photos and just inch by inch, just like the boxes. We put these together and we've got to, we do mostly dowel joints, you know, some dovetailing in spots. Not too crazy with the joints. That's us documenting a fillery we're going to use on that one. Yeah, keep going, keep going. That's it getting stripped down to raw wood. That it's upside down. That's the harp. The harps are cast iron. That was a signature in the back of it that we kept. We didn't know what it meant, but we kept it just in case it meant something to them. All of this is hand sanded. We don't use any strippers whatsoever, except, sorry, on the harp. Everything we use, we scrape or sand out. The strippers swell the veneers and damage the when you've got a 100-year-old or 120-year-old, 130-year-old piano, that the strippers, even gentle strippers like citrus strip, they can go in and damage the veneer and break the bond. And then when you're using waterborne finishes, the veneer can pop off. So you really can't use any strippers when you're working on pianos, on instruments this old and delicate. It's all hand done. We primarily use air net sanding. We don't use paper all that much, a little bit of paper, and that picture was all paper, but air net, I don't know, is everybody here familiar with air net? No? Air net is just, it's a type of sandpaper. It's porous all the way through. You can hook them up to machines to suck right through them so you don't get globulates in your sandpaper, so you don't scratch. And they last a lot longer. And then we take ours through grades. So our 80 grit will become our 120 grit, which becomes our 220 grit, which becomes our 300. So we throw them into boxes because you can feel them. So much of what we do is just by feel. We've been doing it. I've been doing this for 25 years, and we know how these feel. So when we're done sanding, like, yeah, that's 300 now. And then you take it, yeah, now it's 6. Until it finally is about 1,000 grit, and then it goes into the trash. That is a picture of me. I don't know why that's there. Yeah, keep flying. This is we've re-gilded the harp now. Okay, that's all waterborne. That's Pearl Effect waterborne. These are all of the original pieces back on and embossed. All of the lettering is hand done. We do that with a gilder's tip. This is the action. All the original parts, we test them for strength, and if they're still viable, we reuse them. Typically, we send them off to their plater and get them re-nickeled, or brassed if they need to be brassed. This is just more repair work. A lot of epoxy putties and stuff like that when you get into this. Now, there are a number of times that we have to re-veneer an entire piano. We've done entire instruments. We'll usually use a vacuum process to get the veneers down, and that's a huge pain and it adds a lot of money to it. This person wanted the piano black. They didn't want it to go back to the original color. We really loved the original color, and so I talked them into letting me do the front. This is the key bed and whatnot. I was taking it apart and redoing all of that. All that's going to get pulled apart, new pins and everything put in. That's my mom, and that's my assistant. There's the case. Now it's black. They wanted it a stand. Those are just parts that we had to reduplicate. That's all the original parts back after they came back from the nickel plating. Those are just the case parts, and now we're putting it all back together. We've redone all these tops are redone. Those are all recreated now. We had to get rid of the original ones and put all of those. Those are all load bearing, so they had to be redone. And now we've created all these templates to line it. So these are all blocks that we put in, so we can put the harp in exactly where it was to start, and then from that point we augment it to where it needs to be. But it's a lot faster to get it right where it was. You can't leave it where it was because it's always wrong, because they collapse. But we've got to get back there so we can jump back to where it needs to be. So there's the front. That's all. If you want to go back, that's there. That's all shellac. That's the original wood in that piece. We had to take from the back. We replaced the back and we reused the original wood on the front. That's just a half-inch veneer. And you can keep on going. That's us getting ready to string. And there I am stringing it. You can keep flying through. That's the different grades of string. Those are the parts that were primed. And there we go. We're putting string on. Now we've got all the parts black. You can keep on flying. Those are the keys. That's us just pulling parts out. There's the board. There's literally, there we are, soda blasting that. All right, now here's, the rails have all been re-nickeled. I remade all of the wooden rails, and this is the original action, and we had to order parts and just cut and make them into what we needed. These are the old wheels. We always try to use the original. Let me look at the brass rollers inside of that. You've got your wheel here, and then brass rollers that go all the way around, and you can oil them. I mean, nobody makes hardware like that anymore. You can't buy wheels that are made like that any longer. That wheel will last another 100 years. Keep going there. There's the piano coming together. There is it strung now. We've got the strings on. Yeah, that happens sometimes. So this is brass. This is cast iron. That's rosewood. That's cast iron. This is void-free rock maple. Rock maple, when we use it, has got to be no less than 12 grains per inch. It's the rock maple, like capping material for this. Usually it's about $700 just for the rock maple to put that cap back in. It's
What do you mean by 12 grains per inch? You talking about the lineage or what?
so when the grains on the actual, when you measure it out, you've got 12. That's how tight the grains are together. So there's a very, very tight grain pattern. It's not cheap. It's got to be strong. Its Junker rating is not all that high, actually. I think rock maple comes in at like 1,800 pounds. It's not, maybe 2,200. I think it's more like 18. It's not. We've tried using other things like Ipe in the past, which is I think around 3,200 pounds, and it's too hard to work with. It's just too hard to work. It takes forever. You know, when you start experimenting with those really hard woods, like the chessboard. There you go. Yeah, you end up with things that are so out of scale to what you're used to, and then also anything you have them work with, it turns into a mess. And then also there's musical aspects that you got to watch out for. So these are all parts that these are all thousands of parts that we get, and then we just build tons of jigs and put all these parts in and cut and slice them to make them fit what we need. So it's a lot of jig making when we get into actions. And then we build the whole action, and then we install it and then start yanking it up the pitch. That's the bottom kickboard. This is the original wood that was there. So here's the piano now. You can keep going. That's just finishing up, and there's the front that we talked them into keeping. That's what the entire piano looked like. But the whole piano looked like that. And I could not talk them into having us do the piano. No, they would not. They wanted black. I mean, I had to force them basically to let us do these inlays because they did not want, they wanted a black piano. There we are, just doing the final adjustments. And there we go, and that's the, and there they are putting the last piece on. This is a year later, and there we are with the final piano. Nothing like the original, and it plays like a dream. And we delivered it about a year ago, and now we're picking it up and taking it back to Texas because they're moving back to Texas. So in November, we're taking it back down to Texas again. So that's it. We do have a picture of a grand. This was a shellac. This one we did complete. You can just kind of leave it all up like that. This was all shellac. We redid this one. We stripped this one and redid this one all in shellac again. This is a Chickering quarter grand. Redid the entire soundboard, new soundboard, harp. So we'll build soundboards and design them and put them all back together. And then I didn't get very good photos of this one. I just sometimes forget. This one, yeah, so here's all, that's all. So that is a shellac, on the soundboard it's a shellac with a Malaysia 80 sheen finish on top. The action on this is all handmade wood. That's all laminations from 140 years ago. That's all maple. And here's the piano after we were finished back in the house. That's hand rubbed shellac, the entire thing.
You play nowadays in terms of the finish on pianos. Obviously you're all shellac, but
Nitrocellulose lacquer. So yeah, there's a back shot of it. That piano, I wish I had better photos of before. It was destroyed. It was absolutely destroyed. Now most pianos are nitrocellulose lacquer. Well, used to be. Now it's switched over. They're mostly really high density polymers. They spray at about 90% solids. I mean, it's basically a hose. In fact, but they're so toxic that a lot of the manufacturers ship the pianos down to Indonesia. They spray them there where they let the people just drop dead when they're done. Because, I mean, like these things are, and then they bring them back. because the EPA won't even let you spray this stuff for the most part because they're highly volatile. They explode like at the drop of a hat. They're in these barrels that you have to keep hooked to a computer program that monitors them in off gases constantly, and then they're just terrible to inhale. So our whole modus operatus is staying away from all that. Like I said, waterbornes and recovery of old instruments.
I'm sorry, you use shellac because, why? Is it because it protects the wood from UV rays more, or?
So the reason, why we like shellac is, first off, I think shellac is, my personal opinion, is the most beautiful finish out there. It doesn't adulterate the wood. You know, the shellac blends with wood really easy, gets in deep, and it really brings out what's in the wood. You know, it doesn't have a dead finish at all. Any other finish, when you start to spray, you're spraying layers that sit up on top. Shellac goes deep into the grain, and when you French polish it, it's a very, very thin, you know, a couple mil only. Whereas polys, you're spraying at 5 mil, and then 5 mil and 5 mil, and then when you're done, you got 10, 11 mil on top of the finish. Well, you're not seeing the wood as much. And then it also, it may pop it for a while, but it's more subject to changing and altering than a shellac is. And then a shellac is very easy to bring back to life. Shellac is a little bit of shellac and a little bit of alcohol and a little bit of mineral spirits, and you start rubbing and that shellac comes right back.
Will that tend to stop the oxidation colors of the wood more than like a poly wood?
Well, shellac is an amazing sealer as far as like shellac. You can put anything on top of shellac. Everything works with shellac. So if no matter what you want to use as your final coat, say you want to poly it, shellac gives you a base to hold on to that is incredibly strong. It really slows down grain swelling, especially, you know, if you do it in a two-part. Shellac it, knock it down, shellac it again, and then move on. It's just a beautiful finish, and it's a great base for if you want to jump into other finishes on top of that.
What brand of shellac do you use?
Like I said, I order everything from the Shellac Shack. I never use waxed shellacs. I only de-waxed. I don't know much about waxed. I know that waxed is used more for touch-up, but we use all de-waxed.
And how many types are there that you get from them, or is it just one?
Oh, we get all kinds. We get blonde, super blonde, garnet, light garnet.
You get natural.
Well, that's good. They don't call it natural. They're going to call it like super blonde, I think is the lightest one that they have. And so that's what, you know, if we want just something really clear, super blonde is what we use. And then we blend. We measure everything out and make our own concoctions for color, depending on what we need. And we always do that by weight. That way we can consistently always end up the same color.
So essentially there's just one kind of shellac.
Oh, there's only one kind of shellac, yeah. Yeah, sorry. Well, waxed and de-waxed.
Okay.
But yeah, shellac is just an excretion from the shellac beetle that they pull out of trees. It's not man-made. It's made by Earth. Yeah, pretty basic.
The piano you featured there at the end, do you have any idea what that sold for back in the day?
That piano would have probably been about $3,500. And this rebuild job, I think, was $42,000 when we were done. So it went from $3,200 to $42,000. So
What year?
this one I think was 1904. I think I'd have to look. We work on so many. I mix them up.
Joe, can you give us a short history of Jackson Piano?
Sure. I started working on pianos back in 1997 under a rebuilder named Julius Konopka. And then I launched my own company in 1999, only because he had me as an independent contractor, so I had to open a corporation, company to get my paychecks. And then I did my own offshoot in 2003. Opened up a shop on Cherokee Street. We were on Cherokee Street for a decade. Then we started a non-for-profit called Pianos for People, and then we moved that into our building, and then we moved into our newer building in the West End, and then that was in 2012, I think, or 13, and then now last year we purchased another building in the Old North, and that's where we're going to be working on our manufacturing. Our goal is to in the next 4 years, to come up with our own small line, once a year piano builds that we build from scratch, focusing on cabinetry that is for lack of a better word, out of this world, and our own harp design each time. So the only thing that we can't really do at this point is we can't build harps. I'm working with a structural engineer who builds bridges, and we're trying to figure out a way that we can build a harp that we can have an AutoCAD for, and then reload, and then just once a year build a piano around it. So that's the goal, and that's what we're working on. And so hopefully in 4 more years, we will have a once a year grand piano that we produce, mostly just for our own pride. We're going to lose money every time, I know it.
How many employees do you have?
There's 20, and we do we do everything. We do piano tuning, piano rebuilding, piano sales, and we do piano moving. We move all around the country. I'm taking a piano a couple weeks to Tucson, Arizona. Week after that, I'm driving one up to Thieves Island in Vancouver. Then I got to go a couple weeks after that to New York. We just got back from New York about a month ago, where we did a run of a piano to New Jersey, New York, Boston, and back again. And then in the summer, we got one to Lake Tahoe and another one to Chico, California. So we travel all over the country.
It sounds like you're trying to recreate these with pretty much original materials as much as possible. What about adhesives? Do you use the old world adhesives, or do you go modern with them?
So primarily what we try to use is hide glue. And there's many forms of hide glue. We use, I think the mix number is 152, mostly. It's hard to work with hide glue. I mean, I love hide glue, but it's got a learning curve. Hide glue is my #1 glue to go to. Outside of that, Tight Bond 2. All of our felt work, we use PVCE. We use a fair amount of CA glues, different varying, when we've got like areas that we've got to just get into something thin, we'll use we'll use super thin CAs. High glue for the action and things like that, it's all high glue. We know what high glue does. We know the pull effect of it. It's very reliable and predictable. So that's I go through tons of high glue. Yeah. Anything else?
Your general clientele is who?
The bulk of our clients are people here in St. Louis. I'd say maybe 5% or so are around the country, but around the country are probably 25% of our yearly gross, because those are the ones that want to pay a lot. So your average ticket around here is going to be a couple $100 per client. Then, or when you get to repair work, you're at $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 per client. But when we get out to the different areas, we're usually looking at bills that are going to be in the $15,000 to $50,000 range. So while they're driving out far is not, we maybe have 15 to 20 far distance deliveries a year. Those ones are going to be considerably more expensive than our average client. But 97% is just tuning, work, and moving. We tune about 60 pianos a week, and we move about 45 pianos a week.
Since alcohol is a solvent for shellac, is it ever used as part of the stripping process?
Yes. If it's a shellac finish, we will use alcohol and melt the finish off, and then wash it out. Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's great. That's the only thing that we really use that is volatile, is alcohol. When we're spraying, we will also spray shellac. When I spray shellac, I actually use Everclear, you know, like you drink. I mean, you drink if you've got a drinking problem. Not to say Everclear is wrong, but I would never put that stuff in my system. But when I spray, so I'll actually spray shellac, and so yeah, I'll use Everclear to cut it. That way I know that I'm not going to have fish eyeing or anything weird, and it's not going to off-gas some odd chemical. It's a lot cheaper than buying chemist-grade alcohol. Chemist-grade alcohol is like $150 or so a gallon. Well, you can buy Everclear for $8 a bottle, and it's the same stuff. It's grain alcohol, and it's pure enough that you're allowed to drink it if you have a death wish.
Stove fuel, alcohol stove fuel, that's...
Yeah, you can use that. Yeah, you can use that. Yeah, I try not to because no one tells you how they denature alcohol. So you don't know what they put in. And I've had denatured alcohol that's straight up oily. And you don't want to put that on your wood because you don't know what it's going to put in the wood. Trust me, we've had some horrible disasters. We had something 2 months ago. We were soda blasting outside and the door came open and a little bit came in. I had 2 solid weeks of finishes going horribly wrong. Because have you ever experienced baking soda getting into your spray? It is absolutely horrible. Baking soda getting into any kind of paint bubbles like crazy. Just tiny, unseeable amounts will cause your finish just to burst open everywhere. So we're very careful about contaminants because you get this far in a piano and then you get a contaminant, man, you say goodbye to your profit. You're gone. You're working for free at that point on. So we are very careful. In fact, we've got giant air scrubbing walls at our shop. We've got these ones that are like, they're about 8 foot wide and 7 foot tall, and they move. I can't remember how many CFMs it's a lot, something like 14,000 CFM. It's loud when they're all the way up. You have to wear ear protection because it's deafening. But we do that because 1, we don't want people inhaling, and 2, we don't want anything landing in our finishes. So stove alcohol, we tend to stay away from that because of the unknowns.
So the world pollutes your place rather than going out.
Yeah.
Protect yourself.
Yes. Yeah. The air in our finishing shop is cleaner than the air outside because all of our air scrubbers go through carbon cleansers, and so they take all the VOCs out. So yeah, we've got very nice breathable air.
So you do, I'm fascinated by what you do with old antique pianos and working on this furniture. Do you partner with other companies that work on antique furniture and period pieces?
Sometimes, not often. It's just an issue they don't know we exist. Whenever someone finds out, we're a small mom and pop. We don't have giant budgets, so we don't have, probably none of you have ever heard of us because we don't advertise. We're almost 100% word of mouth. And we don't have an advertising person, and we don't really focus like that. So when they do, like I do work for the director of the art museum, he has me do his own personal stuff at his house. but has it ever occurred to him to have me do anything at the museum? No. Am I going to bring it up? No. Because that's high pressure stuff that I don't like. But when people, I do for a number of finishing companies. I had one a couple weeks ago that they brought their a piano to me and a couple benches because they couldn't figure out what they were doing wrong. So we do fix things for people because we do a lot of research because we are in our realm. Okay, if it has to do with things that we work on, we do a ton of research. And a lot of that can transfer to other areas. So some crossover, not much.
The knowledge sharing and the techniques you use on these pianos could transfer easily to furniture and vice versa.
Yeah, I would love to see more. I would love to have more partnership. That's something, I would love to join something like this. Our biggest problem right now is I work 7 days a week. And so, and when I'm not working, I'm traveling with these pianos. So my poor kids, I've dragged them all over the country on a regular basis. So.
Out of curiosity, have you ever done a harpsichord?
No. I've had people try to talk me into that too so many times. No, I would want to. I want to build one. I have a friend who builds them all the time. I just don't have time, but I really want to. It's on my bucket list to get into building harpsichords, but I'm going to have to hold off on that one for a little while. Yeah.
On that Texas piano, how did you get those keys so white? I can't hear it.
Oh, we actually put new keys on that. Yeah, those are new. Yeah, I'd love to say we did something special, but no, no. We do keep enough ivory that I've had to re-ivory keyboards before. With old ivory, it's a pain. You can't get ivory anymore. You can get other forms. You can get warthog tusk. You can get. I actually have got a caught leg that's put on a couple sets of woolly mammoth tusk keys. He goes to Alaska, and woolly mammoth tusks actually work their way up in the springtime, and he flies out there once a year, and he finds chunks of it. He slices it thin, and then he'll do keyboards for us. It's kind of yellow, but yeah, you can't get ivory. In fact, I can't ship. I've had to take ivory off of pianos that we were shipping to like Kazakhstan and stuff in Paris because you can't ship it out with ivory.
I just want to know, do you play the piano?
I used to, not anymore. It's yeah. I mean,
He works on it.
the chef never eats at his own restaurant. You know, working on pianos has really taken. It's not fun to play anymore. You just hear everything that's wrong. You see everything that's wrong. You know, I'm sure you work on a piece a bunch, and then you go to a store and you look at something that they have up for sale, and you're like, oh, that's all wrong. You can see everything because your eyes are on, you're in woodworking mode. You see the little glue places that they hid things and how bad the finish is on it. It's like that for pianos with me. I hate even seeing shows because you're just listening for something to go wrong the whole time. I always tell people we're like the pit crew. The pianist is the driver running around in the circle for 500 miles, you know, NASCAR style. We're the pit crew that makes sure that it all works out fine. But we're not going to be driving that thing. So, yeah. Is that it? Nope.
Do certain woods give you better quality sound or different sounds, or is it all in the movements, the soundboards and such?
So the old pianos with the old growth wood sounds, in my opinion, they're amazing. Newer pianos are dead. They're dead sounding. The soundboard has got some movement to it, but the cabinets are dead. They're mostly particle board and MBF board. And so you don't get resonance. There's nothing there. But yeah, the old ones, you know, you can go up to the old ones and you can thump the side and you hear whoa. And where the new piano, you thump it, it goes thunk. It's not musical. But yeah, I mean, it really is. Like some of these old Kanabis, you'll be shocked the wood you find inside of them. You open it up, and they're using, like, for structural pieces, like gorgeous chunks of oak, beautiful chunks of walnut. I've pulled pianos, flipped them upside down, and the whole bottom is walnut. Gorgeous walnut. That they just, 120 years ago, it wasn't good enough to be, a piece on the front. It's better than anything you find at a store nowadays. But they didn't care 120 years ago about it because it was everywhere. And so it really is amazing that the qualities of wood that you find in instruments.
So is there a particular type of wood that you would appreciate more than others? Or is it stuff that's indigenous to this area or stuff that you find in South America or something?
It's pretty basic when it comes to pianos. The soundboard's spruce, musical grade spruce, period. White Canadian or Sitka. Those are your options, or white German. The cabinets usually are oak and maple, sometimes some other things, but maple and oak are the primary building blocks for pianos. Nothing local. I know that Missouri's got beautiful white oak. I mean, Missouri's, I've got a customer who has won gobs of awards. He has an barrel making company in Sullivan. And he ships white oak wine barrels all over the world. And Sullivan is actually known for being one of the premier white oak wine barrel making facilities in the whole planet. Yeah. And so we do have amazing white oak here. I'd love to get involved with using white oak more. Growing up in St. Louis and South St. Louis, I got sick of oak because everything in my house was oak. I mean, oak floors, oak trim. I mean, now I'm appreciating it, but growing up, I hated oak because that's all you ever saw in South St. Louis. Every house was oak. But you go to other cities and you start to realize, wow, okay, we had some beautiful oak here. So white oak is something I'd like to experiment with more because it's plentiful in Missouri. Yeah. Anything else? All right, thank you. And I have some stickers if anybody wants a sticker. A sticker. Yes.
We'd love to have a sticker.
All right, I got some
Do
over
you give
there.
tours if you're ever
Yes, we
ever
do.
here?
Yeah, we do. We give tours, and then also I quite often have parts if anybody wants to have some. I keep a collection of piano grand legs that I give those away to artists and woodworkers, and they'll chop them up and turn them into different things. Quite often the furls will still be on there, and the furls on these old guys are brass furls like this thick, heavy.
I'll back my truck up.
You come on down. We give away those pieces all the time.
We would love to have a tour.
No. No.
Nice
Anything
try.
like that I don't get. I do keep my private stock. So yeah. Yeah. So
Thank you.
thank
so
you for
much.
having me. This was
And-
amazing.
and
It was wonderful.
I would love to have a tour.
Anytime you want, just give us a call.
All right. Okay, you guys didn't eat enough cake? I can't lug it home because I'm leaving on a 6:15 flight in the morning. So I would say belly up to the table and let's get rid of this cake. I'm going to take some cookies. Oh,
Those cookies are good.
I know. David made these cookies.